thank you for the answer. Bad at these things. Please take a
mobile-based, and we provide legal advisory services. We do some training programs. We do publications. We are in a host of similar such activities. You can look us up at our website. Today's session, I've tried to keep it. I've been thinking whether. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I've been thinking, should it be like a formal training with a PowerPoint and things like that? Because the subject which Karen has suggested to me includes legal, fundraising, CSR, and considering the time constraints, any module of that sort would be, I think it would be very, very challenging. Face-to-face discussion on some of these issues. We try to cover all these subjects which Karen has wanted me to do. So I think one of the best ways to go around is maybe a quick round of introduction from everybody about who you are by your name, your organization, and what expectations you have of this. And I believe we have to wind up by 5:30, so we barely got like an hour left with us. So I would like to maybe ask you to. Yeah.
So my name is Sanjeev Vyas, and I work for a USAID funded project called the Improving Energy Maintenance Program, which is managed by FHI 360, which is an international NGO. And we've been set up by USAID to help the Government of India on behavior change communication. The government has identified B60 as a weak link in their programming. And we are helping them with communication and also building their capacity to develop and disseminate and evaluate communication.
And anything particular that you would expect from here?
Yeah, I think the entire Companies Act that has come about, there is a lot of confusion, and we face that confusion because part of my work is really to take some of the campaigns that we've done for the government to the private sector in a PPP mode, and the interpretation of the Companies Act and the legal entire jargon that is around this whole system is confusing a lot of people right now. And the more you learn, the more confused you get. Like recently, government had listed out in a circular about 10 or 12 areas in which you can work, which would qualify for 2% CSR credit. And one of them was communication or advertising. And we have come up with this entire activation platform called Tal Smile, where we're getting the private sector to sponsor some communication around behavior change. And when we went to a few companies, they were very keen to work with us. But somehow when they talk to people like EY and PwC, they had an interpretation that probably this will not qualify as 2%. So it's very confusing, although they say advertising and they say it should be a long-running campaign or a run-off campaign, which we were doing. So ideas such as these, if there can be greater clarity, and I think apart from you, I think we can learn a lot from people around the table as well, and we can have a good discussion.
Good evening, I'm Spatika from ISEC, which is by and large a youth-run organization which is present in 124 countries. And even in India, it's placed in 25 local offices. And I'm coming from the national team. And my role is to head all sorts of external collaborations on the country level, implementations across these 25 local offices that we operate from. And something that I really look forward to in this discussion is some form of inputs slash ways that we could come up with shared values based implementations and business models that we could work on, and maybe pitch that in when it comes to fundraising, because when it comes to fundraising, a corporate just looks at the money going in and maybe not being seeing the impact side of it, or the other side of it, or seeing the value that is being driven down through the money. And something that I really look for is the shared value from the grassroots level to the corporate level, where they're giving in all this financial help towards any kind of projects that they're doing. I hope I was clear. Hello, I'm here with the organization MOVA, Men Against Violence and Abuse. So that is why I'm here today. So my name is Shikha, and I'm with Marika from Sweden. And we're students from Gävle University. With MOVA here, we're doing our internship or practical placement with them. So it will be interesting to get a little bit more about the subject because I think we both have just a little insight. Not much. So thank you.
I'm Vikas Putran from Giving There. We is a donation platform for NGOs. We obviously are in the space of NGOs in the social sector, and we would like to be a catalyst and participate in the whole CSR mandate that has come out.
Hello, my name is Esper Hussain. I am from MOVA.
My name is Sanjay. I represent Champion India Foundation. We are a small funding agency, basically looking at microloans for projects in bathrooms and micro businesses. I'm here particularly because I've just established a company and starting with high permission and including fundraising. So we really starting with prior permission. So if I can get some guidance or
How long ago have you been formed?
it was formed in November and we are asking for it.
November last year.
It's a section 25, so
That's it. Okay.
I mean that's the concern.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Rahul Mehta. I represent ISKCON, and our interest would be to know, how we could a greater clarity on the CSR guidelines as per the new Companies Act, and also greater clarity on the FCRA process per se. Prior permission is what you mentioned, but is it only prior permission, or we can kind of have a blanket permission over a period of time if there is a fund flow on a sustained basis? And there has been one past attempt from one of our team members and on procuring FCRA, and that has been really long drawn without success. So is that a rule, or is that an exception that we need lots of patience to go through the entire bureaucratic setup? That kind of clarity on the FCRA process would be great. Thank you.
Basically, I'm from health and hospital management background, so I wanted to understand how does a CRS governance actually works, and how could the fundraising be done for the NGOs. Like I'm working, having my several projects with different NGOs. So I just wanted to understand how does a fundraising could be done to benefit them.
Good evening all. Myself Dr. Isha. I am a student from Devapati University Business Management. I have done a couple of projects with the health sector. I am here to learn more about the concerned topic and to gain more knowledge.
So what is the concern topic?
So the concerned topic is about the CSR governance, about the fundraising activities that are actually taking place, because what we learn in books, I think it is way different than what is happening in reality. So after attending the session, I might be able to figure out the things that I'm actually looking forward to.
My name is Serena Fernandez, and I'm here on behalf of the Ashram School Project. The Ashram School Project is a volunteers collective that is working with the Ashram schools in the rural areas of Maharashtra, particularly Damur. And these are schools dedicated to the education of tribal students. We're working to better the education, infrastructure, and also help them gain some skill-based education. We're looking particularly using this forum as an insight to understand how corporates work, how CSR works, and how corporates can actually involve their employees in this process of bettering the education and infrastructure.
I'm Dr. Kumar. I'm from Freedom for Youth Foundation in NGO. Of course, it's nice wherever he speaks. I am more or less on there. It's nice. Every session we attend of last 2, 3, 4 years, you always gain some knowledge. First is knowledge, of course. Second is Of course, now the CSR bill has come, CSR Act has come, CSR governance is a lot of loose contacts every day, some other clarifications are coming. Regarding now they have included road safety also in this, and yesterday they have included Kashmir contribution of 2% to Kashmir flooding is also considered as CSR. So a lot of clarifications. So maybe the latest he can throw some light on what's happening in this field. Of course, FCRA is his forte. He will have to already has asked the question. So nice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sangeeta Dasgupta. I'm one of the founders of a healthcare startup company by the name of Arogya Online Healthcare and Information Services. Actually, I got to hear about you yesterday. I'm not from Nashik, and we are going to be starting our operations in Mumbai. So there was a Thomson Reuters meet yesterday on trust law, and I was directed by them to attend this workshop. The reason is that we are getting into online healthcare services, and we are looking at the legal framework that we would need to take care of if we want to bring technology into the thing. The second thing is that I also realized that as a part of our, once we are going in the market, we could look at some social impact projects too, where Arogya Online could participate. But I would like to know the legal framework if we want to volunteer to implement any CSR project in the healthcare space. Because we would be building a services team. We are not an NGO, we are a startup company. But yes, we do want to do some projects.
When you say legal framework, you mean what kind of registered status you should have is what you're saying?
We are a private limited company, right. Not DAM, but you see, we would have to define the policies on, when we would be outsourcing service providers to provide services to members of Arogya Online. So what would be the legal framework? We wouldn't, to safeguard our members, their data, because data access is going to be across internet. Yes. So how do we have to, what compliance we would have to do and safeguard ourselves before we start our operations? We don't want to get into litigation issues later. And yes, if CSR, if we think that we are approached by some of our, client networks, which would be tapping the corporates. If they want, we would like to implement some healthcare related services for them under the CSR program. So what legal requirements we would have to fulfill. So that's what I've come to gather information about.
I'm Harish. I'm one of the founder members of this organization called Men Against Violence and Abuse. I think 3 of my colleagues have already used. It stands for an organization which believes in working with boys and men to stop and prevent gender-based violence on women, which is not seen as a priority area by all concerned. So I'm a friend of Noshad, so I've been attending some of his workshops quite regularly. I'm more keen is how this organization of mine can liaise with a suitable corporate, for some of its activities.
By qualification, I'm a chartered accountant, and professionally I have been in the field of traditional practice as well as consulting CEOs for growth. Last few months, I have also initially started out that my CEOs wanted some guidance on the CSR on Section 135, and which is what I started. And thanks to Noshad Rajan's earlier workshops, did gain some knowledge on that. I'm here basically to upgrade my knowledge. In the last few months, there have been really major changes in terms of the Section 135 or the number of items that are now covered under Section 135 or any other compliance issues that may have changed over the last few months. That is one, and the fundraising part, which is the other one.
Hi, my name is Aniruddha Adre. I am a social entrepreneur for the last 5 years, but before that I've been in the corporate world, specifically in the automotive industry in the US for 11 years. Right now we are into renewable energy. We make very long-lasting solar lanterns, and we work with the tribal communities in unelectrified villages in India. And we work with a lot of CSR partners, and currently we're implementing a World Bank funded project in Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh. So specifically with this workshop, I wanted to learn more about the fundraising scenario in terms of after the CSR bill has come out, what kind of sectoral focus does the government have in mind? Is there specific related to healthcare, clean energy, and things like that?
Good. So from what I gather, two highest common factors seem to be FCRA and CSR at number one. I think around the table, the concerns are largely around that. So I'll try to address it as best as I can. I'll speak a little and try to address some of the issues that have been specifically raised by some of you around this table. Let me start with this new Indian Companies Act of 2013. That Section 135 has come into force from 1st April this year. And companies, whether you are private limited, whether you are public limited, or whether even if you are a foreign company, if you meet the criteria of turnover, net worth, or a profit of 5 crore, you are hit by this particular Section 135, which requires that the aggregate of your net profits, and your profits refers to profit before tax, PBT, not PAT, and it is to be calculated on the basis of a block of last 3 financial years. So, although the Section 135 speaks of in any financial year means a block of 3 previous financial years. So, any company which will look at its net profits or turnover and those 3 criteria which are there, and if they are hit by this, they are required to A, have a CSR committee in place. A CSR committee needs to have 2 of the company's directors and 1 independent director. But if it is a private limited company or companies which do not require an independent director, then just the 2 directors of the company can be on the CSR committee. What has been mandated under 135 is having a CSR committee in place if you are hit by Section 135 and having a policy in place. Doing CSR or not, in that sense, is not mandatory. Because there is a famous escape clause under subsection 5 of 135 which says that if a company is unable to do CSR, then it must just inform why it has not been able to do CSR. In the very first year, it could be a very flimsy excuse that we have no history of doing CSR, we are still doing a pilot study, whatever, and it all depends on the company and its concern for its own brand equity and concern about how ridiculous or nice it wants to look before the public on its own website, because the CSR report along with the company's annual report has to be put in public domain, especially on the website, and that has been specifically stated under the Companies Act. I cannot think of companies who are very concerned about their brand equity would make a statement such that we have not been able to do CSR. But having said that, there's a lot of excitement around availability of funds under the new Companies Act. I would say be enthusiastic, but don't get too excited. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA, has said that some 20,000 crores will be available for CSR giving in this fiscal year itself. When you look at the scale of things, some of you may have came to look at this year's financial budget, the union budget of the central government, it has laid aside not 20, not 40, not 60, but 80,000 crores on primary education alone. And that's the government's outlay on primary education alone. In the scale of things, this 20,000 crores is not big. There are 3 types of companies that I've seen and these last few ones have seen me interact with a number of companies. I mean, directly involved with doing training workshops for them, helping them either write their policy or to tweak their policy or to refine policies that already existed but now needs to come in compliance with the requirements under 135. And there are people who say we have done it for so many years, this is nothing new, we just have to put a structure in place. So there might be companies who said for years we were focusing only on education and we work with, let us say, an Akanksha or Teach for India, and we continue doing that. We are not interested in doing anything outside of that. So a lot of companies have already been in CSR. There are others who consider this new act which has come as a sort of a compulsory charity tax upon them, quote-unquote charity tax, because if some of you may have seen that when the last union budget was presented by Mr. Arun Jaitley in Parliament, he says that there will be no deductions for CSR under Section 37. But any other deductions which are available, the company can avail of. In other words, if an NGO has an ADG certificate, a company deciding to implement its CSR activities through that NGO might be able to claim a 50% deduction up to 10% of its income. Probably if an organization has 35 AC, which is generally given for rural welfare and development of urban slums, it would claim a 100% deduction. What would be even more attractive for a company is organizations like, let us say, BAIF or the BNHS, which is Bombay Natural History Society, and these kind of research associations, which under 35.12 and 35.13 have deductions which are weighted as high as 175%. And the attraction for doing work, and because the environment is so high, things like many of these organizations may be very sought after by companies. And the Companies Act has provided a lot of things under the rules, whereby if a company wants to do CSR, it has the preference to A, do it on its own, B, do it through its own foundation, and C, work with any other implementing agency, and that is the term which has been used, which is either a trust, either a society under the Act of 1860 or a Section 8 company, which under the old Companies Act of 56 was Section 25. So the guidelines have been given thus that if you fall under those categories, a company might be interested. It's very clear from the Act that CSR is not equal to donation. So your organization is doing good work, so the company just writes up a check to you for the great work that Baba is doing or Aravia is doing. Here's 10 lakhs of rupees, that's not CSR. It has to be project linked. When you speak of project, it needs to have a time frame. It could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or it could be an ongoing, it will just go on. But there have to be very clear, you have to be very clear when you are approaching a company that you go to it with a clear proposal. That proposal must be in a project mode, because this is what is mandated for a company. That they cannot just write out a check to you. The only time when they can simply write out a check is by giving out a check to the Prime Minister's National Relief Fund. That's the only time probably they could be doing that. Which is one of the things which is covered under one of the points listed under the Schedule 7. So what constitutes CSR activities that has been provided under Schedule 7? Schedule 7 is a vast, exhaustive list which covers healthcare, preventive healthcare, it covers environment, it covers war veterans, it covers sports, it covers a whole. Road safety comes under education. Road safety is not specifically stated under Schedule 7. What has happened is that the government went back and forth. When it made the rules, in the rules they said Schedule 7 is an indicative list, and therefore do not be tied down by that. Then they changed it within a matter of months and says, whatever you do must be within the parameter of Schedule 7. Then come 18th June 2014, and they brought out yet another circular and says Schedule 7 can be interpreted liberally. The words were liberally. And they said, how liberally? So they said things like what you rightly said, road safety can come under education, teaching people to drive can come under skills. They had given those kinds of examples to us. So they said, people had argued that disaster relief is nowhere there, although you spoke of Kashmir that has come. But specifically, okay, this is Kashmir specifically, but there could be a disaster happening in Andhra Pradesh or wherever. So they said, what happens during a disaster? People need basically food, they would need skills perhaps. Anything that you do at the time of that will be considered as disaster relief. So basically, let us say there has been an earthquake, tsunami, what is it that you want to do? You'll be providing food to them, you'll be providing shelter to them. All that is anyway covered in Schedule 7. So go ahead and do your relief work. There were 10 points under Schedule 7. Immediately after the union budget, they included point number 11, and which was slum rehabilitation, that you can do work around slum, because that was something very specifically stated by the Minister for Finance. And this is a young piece of legislation. It is a brand new act of 2030, which has come into effect just on 1st April. Give it time to unfold. A lot of things will change. New modifications will keep coming. So far as I've seen these last few months, things are just getting more and more liberal. New activities are getting included. They are asking you to interpret Schedule 7. But the point of caution that I'm trying to make to all of you is, don't think this is some kind of a Niagara under which you can put your bucket for fundraising. It's not going to happen like that. You won't even get a trickle out of it. Every NGO is very excited about it. That here is this Niagara of 20,000 crores and let's put our bucket under it. It's not going to come like that. It's not going to be easy. Companies that I know of have already set their minds. This is what we'll be doing. We are not going to change it because some new actors come into play. We'll be doing our work. We are fine with that. But there will be a small segment of companies, the newer companies who are hit by this, and they may be good potential sources for you to tap on. How will this all unfold? I think over time the Ministry of Corporate Affairs will give it time. You can't expect it right away. Will prepare a database of companies with name, with web links of who is hit A by Section 135. What are the areas they are interested in? Over time, it is also possible that they will have a database of good NGOs that try to do that matchmaking. Give it time, it may take a year, it may take 2 years, but over time these things will unfold. But right now it is at random. Lots of companies that I know are not very conversant with this act, so they say that, whatever we do, we must do it only in our local area. Now the rule says preference should be given to local area. The word is preference. It doesn't mean that you have to do it only in the area where your company is. So if you are in Mumbai but want to do something which is outside of Mumbai, within the state of Maharashtra, or even outside the state of Maharashtra, the Act doesn't say you need not do it or should not do it. The point is, it just says preference should be given. So that's fine. So look, don't be bound by that. But companies, as I said, some of them will try to do it on their own. You must realize that 35AC is not just given to NGOs. Even a rank for-profit company can apply for 35AC for a project, which is for socio-economic welfare of the country. And any money that will pump into that as a project will be 100% write-off for the company. Make no mistake about that. Section 35AC of the Income Tax Act is very clear in this regard. Who qualifies for that? No one qualifies. A project qualifies for it. A project can be run by a for-profit or a non-profit. Companies will try to look for that. They say, all right, our project is now for the next 3 years to work in sanitation, water, etc. And we will apply to the national company for a 35AC for this project under CSR. And we'll implement it ourselves, or we'll probably, there was a time when there was this question, can you pay salaries to your staff from your CSR budget? At that time we were worried, and we said, okay, there is this capacity building budget that is there, that is 5% out of your 2% can be used for that. Now the new clarification says, out of your CSR budget you can pay your staff as well. So it's very easy for a company, let us say, has a budget of 10 lakhs to give away. Alright, so we are going to have a CSR consultant on our team over here, or a CSR head. We pay out of those 10 lakhs to this person to carry this forward. We will apply to income tax for a 35 AC. We can do it directly. What's else? They can put it in their own foundation. What's worse? You can put it in the corpus of your foundation. It's as simple as that. The company says, okay, this year we got 10 lakhs to give. We put it as a 10 lakh corpus into our foundation. All the interest that will be generated will be for giving scholarships to the girl child in the villages around us. End of CSR. How do you like that? So excitement is there, but I think don't get too excited. If you ask me, do try. But in areas of fundraising, if you will look at even global trends, the largest giver of money is not corporates, it's not foundations, it's individuals. Make no mistake about that. If you would care to look at Giving USA figures, especially for last year, close to 80% is by individuals. And bequests, that is people who leave money in their wills, is 1% more than corporate giving in the US. Corporate giving in the US is 6%, whereas bequest alone is 7% out of that pie chart. I'm not saying that bequest is a big deal here in India. In the US, it's a different scenario. But anywhere that you go, it's the individual who is the biggest giver. So don't ignore that. When you think in terms of fundraising, yes, it requires a lot of hard work. You have to build relationships around that. At the end of the day, an individual is one with whom you can create a relationship for a lifetime. They will continue to help you year after year after year and probably scale their giving. Whereas a company or a foundation will exit after 3 years, or probably go in for another cycle, but at some point they will have an exit policy. Nobody will adopt you for life. It's an individual who you will be able to nurture and keep for life. Just some thoughts that I'm giving you on that. But having said that, if you are interested in CSR, go in project mode. Look at Schedule 7 carefully. There's a lot of this material available on the website, but if you want to know about that, I can share by email the Schedule 7 and various other things with you. There's a lot of material of that sort which I carry in our newsletter and things like that. Many of you probably get it. But you need to create a proposal. When you go to a company with a proposal, A, see that it matches with what is required under Schedule 7. Make sure that your entity has been at least 3 years active. This is one of the other things that is required under the CSR rules. It doesn't say registered for 3 years. It says you need to have been active track record of work over the last 3 years. If you have that, you would still qualify. So these are some of the parameters. When you go with a proposal that there is a framework. This will be the input, this will be the output and the outcome. Impact is a big thing. Impact you may not see probably in your generation. Probably an impact can take 50 years. So impact is a much abused word in this country, if I may say so. I mean, it's very difficult to measure impact. But an outcome is certainly possible. Go to companies with a realistic goal, that this is what we want to achieve, this is it. And most important, let it look good for the company. Why is it that the company may want to see you as an implementing agency? Will you be able to deliver? What sort of assurance can you give the company that whatever you have promised will be delivered? These are some of the thoughts. I'll just take a pause here at the moment to see if there are any reactions or questions that come to what I've just spoken about with CSR. And maybe then we can move to FCRA and other things. So, anyone has anything to say? Or you are just shocked with what all that I told you?
Is it compulsory that making sure that you have 3 years of
Yes, that is what the rules. Just as you have the company's CSR rules, as it is called, of 2014, and in those rules, these various guidelines are being given. And one of the guidelines is, if a company puts money into its own foundation, it need not be 3 years old. It could be a brand new one. But if it has to work with an implementing agency, it has defined what an implementing agency. It can be a trust. It goes to the effect to say that there are many states in this country where the Trust Act does not exist, and therefore just having your 12A certification from income tax would suffice, because you may not have a registration certificate as a trust in even a place like Delhi, because the Trust Act, as you know, is active only in Maharashtra state, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan. Even the national capital of Delhi does not have it. There is an Indian Trust Act whose principles apply, but otherwise there is no charity commissioner in Delhi. There is no charity commissioner in South India, in Karnataka or Tamil Nadu. There are endowment officers which look after temple trusts and things like that, but there is no equivalent of a charity commissioner or a Madras, or let's say a Madras Trust Act or something like that in place. It just doesn't. So if you are in Bangalore or in Delhi and you want to create a trust, all you do is create a trustee and go to the sub-registrar's office and register. And bingo, that's stage 1 over. You try to do it in Maharashtra, you spend 4 months with the charity commissioner. In Delhi, you spend half a day and you are registered, you are ready to go to income tax. It's as easy. So these are the dichotomies that exist under law. So to come back to our point, if you were to work with an implementing agency, the agency must be a trust, or a society under the Act of 1860, or you need to be a company under Section 8 of the New Indian Companies Act, or Section 25 of the Act of 1956. This is the criteria that has been given. Private limited companies have not been named as implementing, but at the same time they have not been excluded either. So if a company wants to do, and there is some tangible work that could be done by a private limited, personally I do not see a specific bar on that. Because in law, what we learn is that what is not specifically denied can be seen as allowed. So we go by that principle. So if one goes by that principle, but somewhere the guiding principle has been given, let your implementing agencies be trust societies or Section 25.
Is there going to be any regulator from the standpoint of the companies? So whatever
the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA will be the regulator. Now this is another point you need to know, that at least as of the moment, we don't know what may happen in 2 years, 3 years, it will all depend on how corporate India behaves. That there is no mechanism contemplated or in place for CSR audit. All that has been required by companies is to have a CSR committee and a CSR policy, and to put up a CSR report at the end of the financial year. No one has said anything about your CSR report being analyzed, evaluated by whom, on what parameters. Penalties are provided under Section 134, which is a section preceding 135. Under what circumstances can you be penalized? And the penalty is huge. It can go up to 25 lakhs of rupees. And officers concerned can have a jail term. But for what? For doing faulty CSR? No, for non-disclosure. If there is no disclosure of your CSR committee, CSR policy and CSR reporting, there could be a fine and there could be a jail term. But for faulty CSR, or what you might deem as faulty, as I said, so you might be doing something which, let us say, hypothetically, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, which right now is the only regulatory body over here, says, hello, this is not CSR. You say, is that right? We thought it was CSR. Oh, we are sorry, we won't do it next year. Thank you very much. Story is over. So right now there is no audit of CSR. And therefore I tell some companies that within reasonable limits and within a reasonable framework, the time for experimentation is now. If you think you can do something and get away, the year is now. Because over time, certain things that the ministry will think that people are taking liberties, they should not be. There will be simple circulars that come out. Like between the time the act has come into force and we are in September, so what are we talking of? A period of 6 months? Think of the back and forth on the rules. Think of how many notifications have come out. It's a young piece of legislation which I would think has been hurriedly done. We are the only country in the world that has mandated CSR. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth. I tell companies, be brave. If you think this is for the good of the people, within reasonable limits, feel free to experiment. What is the worst that the Ministry of Corporate Affairs can do? it can only jail you and fine you for non-disclosure under 134. There is nothing talked about over there for faulty CSR. So if you think that I'm doing this and it is in public interest, that is the important part. Anything that is done for your employees, etc. So they do have a negative list. What is not CSR? Anything that you do within your company, within or for your staff or their relatives, anything that you do outside of India, that will not be CSR. But they will over time increase the negative list. What is not CSR? So far there are only 3 things under what is not CSR. Anything done for the company, any money that you send outside of India is not CSR. So let's say, God forbid, there is a tsunami happening in Sri Lanka and you want to give there, well, that's not supposed to be CSR. You might do it out of goodwill, that's fine, but don't treat it as your CSR application. So this is what the Companies Act is trying to tell us right now. So I tell companies, within reasonable limits, if you want to be a little experimental, go right ahead and do that. The time is now, not later. Because the government will tighten. To your specific query, right now there is no provision. The regulatory body is MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs. It will not audit as of the moment. Over time, what will happen, we don't know. Maybe in the next 5 years, there will be CSR audits. Who knows? They'll get bolder and bolder. Because if corporate India starts taking liberties, this is what will happen. So we have to see, wait and watch. It all depends on everyone's behavior. So I tell people, put your policies in place, put your CSR committees in place, do CSR in the best of interest of this country, and somewhere if there is any tangible benefit coming to your company, there is no harm about that. So somebody was telling me, a company with whom I was consulting, that there is a large piece of tract of land where we want to do some seeding work so that we can green that area. But can we use a kind of a micro-light plane and put our banner over there? I said, yeah, that's incidental. What's wrong with that? So I mean, if you have a school bus which is going to be ferrying children from one village to another to go to school and your banner is there, can anyone fault you for that? End of the day, what are you doing there? If there is a little bit of the branding that happens, you won't be faulted for that. End of the day, that bus is genuinely to take the kids from the village to the school. Great stuff. But you have your company's banner there, no problem. Alright?
Another thing you spoke about is slum rehabilitation. Now, for instance, in a city like Mumbai,
yes.
There are companies who do slum rehabilitation completely for profit, like K-Omkar.
But these must be notified areas by the state government. There's a rider to that. So any place you can't decide what is a slum.
Right.
It must be a notified slum area.
Yeah, but the slum rehabilitation scheme, the SRA basically,
yes,
is the entire, you need a notification to slum.
Yes.
So for example, all these SRA projects that are a company like a Omkar does.
Yes.
So essentially 30 to 40% of the cost of land is coming through SRA, rehabilitation.
Yes. Yes.
So in that sense, they are already doing a lot of CSR.
Yes. True.
But that is not qualified.
It does not qualify, but he's saying, is that it doesn't qualify for CSR, but is that the slum area activity? Yes, I would say answer is yes.
He could just classify some of what he
He has
does.
been given benefit in the form of FSI. Where is the question? He is a builder. Omkar is a builder. So his own products he cannot give it one, say it's a CSR.
If you're doing something that benefits your own company, it's not CSR.
It's not CSR.
Because it is benefiting
His
this
own company.
business.
That is the main business of building, construction.
His activity is legitimate under law, but it won't qualify for CSR is what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah,
his activity is legitimate, it is blessed by the government what he's doing. So that's fine, but it's not CSR.
For that he has been compensated anyway.
See, end of the day, CSR has been reduced to arithmetic. You come under these criteria of net worth, turnover, or profitability, 135 applies. Look at the block of last 3 years, look at your net profit, 2% of that, you have to use that 2%. How do you use that? Has been again laid down under law. You may want to do it in-house, through your foundation, through your NGO, do that CSR activity, and in your CSR report there will be a detailed explanation of how all that happened. So our focus area was education. How did you work in education? We worked through our foundation or the foundation in turn worked with an NGO. How was the reporting system done? What was the monitoring and evaluation? All this must be first clear in your policy so that you don't have trouble with the reporting. And that is why policy writing is the starting point for a company. If the policy is good, reporting will follow very smoothly. That is why I always tell company, focus on your policy right now. It will just make your reporting that much easier.
Doctor, I want to ask you one. You are finished?
No, please go ahead.
Regarding reporting, see, now you are with many companies from the CSR policy.
Yes.
It should be reported before a certain date to the MCA side, like you are filing Form 1, Form 17, Form 20, whatever it will be. Is there a form already designed for this?
There is no form as such. No format has been given for a policy.
Because in the month of April, I happened to meet Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee, who is the father of the CSR for
Yes.
He had already shown the format in which it's going to come, but I don't know whether they have released
There-
it or not. Still.
There is a format for reporting, that is for sure. But for policy, there is not. They have mentioned the ingredients that need to go into a policy. The ingredients is what is your area of work, how it will be implemented, who is your CSR committee. So there are certain key factors that need to go into your policy. So that the ingredients, but how you stir your dal, they have not said. So they have given you all the ingredients to make your food, but how you stir it has been left to you.
So if I'm a pharma company, strips of tablets to people, women in tribal areas. Now it could also be seen as sampling, and it can also be seen as as a CSR activity. So how would you interpret that?
It is not for me to interpret that. We have to seek clarification of this from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. You have to seek. It is not because right now what we know is what we know. Whatever the MCA has brought out, this is for the pharmaceutical lobby, pharmaceutical industry to lobby with MCA and explain to them that this is also one way in which we could do CSR because there was again this at the other day I was at a company and this was being talked about that there is a certain company which brings out the best and the most expensive medical equipment. So suppose they give it to a charitable clinic because it's worth, let's say, almost like 1 crore of rupees. Wouldn't that be CSR? And said, look, it's not for me to tell you that. You need to go to the ministry and get on a case-by-case basis. Because he said no one else makes that equipment and we make the best of that and we want to gift it. But imagine the value of this is like 1 crore. And even if we take our in-house production cost, it still costed a pretty penny. Now, isn't the CSR? I said it's not for me to interpret this part because this is not clear under the laws. So best thing is to get it from the ministry.
Another example is like if I'm seeker and I'm in the business of selling liquor, and every year we see in the month of December, just before New Year, they do a campaign about responsible driving. Don't drink and drive. Now that is a social service message that they're giving out. And it's actually going against their business. At the same time, it's a very intelligent way to do CSR and to build your brand. That I am a responsible corporate, I am telling people, although I am selling liquor, I am telling people not to take and drive.
But social advertising is not listed under Schedule 7.
Advertising is, advertising is not.
Under which part of Schedule 7? It is not there in Schedule. It is not there in Schedule. It is not there.
That is common education.
The 10 points that they are given, it's.
But advertising is not there. Okay. Sure. We'd love to see that.
So I just maybe I understand about exact words, but it's there.
Okay. Let's have it.
You mentioned about this clause that the CSR company should give preference to the local.
The rules say that.
The rules say that. But we always wonder that it actually inhibits the good work that could be done. I'll give you some examples. Like for example, in and around Pune and Mumbai, there are a lot of companies or the IT majors that primarily each of them has a CSR practice. So they have a lot of funds to deploy.
Yes.
However, these companies prefer to have that clause as well, in a way that they use that as a means to improve or enhance the employee satisfaction. So for example, some software company would sponsor a watershed project and have their employees deployed on their weekends to go dig a well.
That's fine. That would be allowed.
Which is good.
It's good and allowed too.
It is allowed. But on the other hand, there are so many communities, so that watershed program would be required, let's say, in Gadchiroli district, where there is no corporate,
right?
But there is a need
And so this is why I tell corporates that, you know, much as you will feel a comfort level doing things in your communities, try to step out of your comfort zone. And why? Because again I tell you that if you are such a cutting edge company, would you not want to look good on your own website that we've reached out where no one else does? Yeah. And think of it. So your point is, I would turn it around. So if you are going to a company and the company says, but you are not in my local area. You say, sir, we are giving you an opportunity to serve an area which no one else has. Why don't you be the first and you can brand it on your website that we were the first to reach there before any company went. Exactly. So when you go, do not go with a begging bowl. Go to them with a business proposal. That's the idea. That you go to them and make a pitch and always keep the CEO's thought in mind. Is it helping my branding? Is it aligned to my business interest? What is it that my company gets out of it? At the end of the day, in a sense, the Finance Act has killed CSR because the moment Mr. Jaitley said that CSR is not tax deductible, everyone's face fell. 37 is not. But other deductions are possible. Now, other deductions, which means it also opens, in a sense, a route for NGOs. Because most NGOs will at least have a basic ATG. Some may even have 35AC and some will even have 3512. But in a sense, the Finance Act has paved some way for NGOs or companies to look for NGOs. But having said that, there is nothing to stop a company from applying on its own for a 35AC also. That we are working on a project in our local area and that will be 100% reduction for the company. That also is possible.
Well, the corporate's logic typically is when we go with a proposal, do it outside their area of control or area of operation, is the inability to monitor the projects after they've been implemented. That is the explanation that we
So you have to talk about, give them assurance about the periodic reporting, how the reporting will be done, and you can use technology for good reporting, right? You can take video footage, you can take a lot of these things. Yes, sir. What is it?
This is the circular that came out on 27th February 2014. And the first point this is eradicating hunger, poverty and malnutrition, promoting preventive healthcare.
Now it has been made into healthcare, including preventive healthcare.
Yeah, so how do you promote healthcare? One of the ways.
Not through advertising.
Yeah, the messaging. Yeah, right. So government has set up our project, the Improving Healthy Papers project. We are a behavior change communication project, and we use TV, radio, media, interpersonal communication to educate people on preventive health.
So he's banking on the word promoting healthcare, which would mean that advertising.
One of the big ways of doing.
All right.
SMS messaging could be another.
I would say try this. If the ministry feels this is not CSR, they'll probably bring out a rule later on to say this kind of surrogate advertising or whatever will not be allowed.
We spoke to IICA and they, in a meeting, they verbally told us this is fine, your project is fine, you can go ahead with it. But the moment you ask them something in writing, which obviously a client would want,
the writing will come to a notification to stop you from doing that. Orally, anybody will give you an assurance. I wouldn't interpret this for what you want to do, but having said that, assuming you did what you did, the MCA has no powers to fine you or put you in jail for that. At best, they will give you a rap on the knuckle and say, hey, this is not CSR. So you say, is that right? Sorry, we will do it from next year. And that's all that can you do.
There's another circular that came out in June which says one-off advertisement is not allowed. So if you have a campaign, I have that right there. I'll show you that.
I am aware of that.
So that says one-off advertisement is not allowed. So if you have a sustained...
Neither is a marathon allowed.
Yeah, marathon is also. So I just read that just for the benefit, since we are getting into a bit of nitty-gritties and you are here to clarify. I think it's a good opportunity.
Sure.
So it says, it is further clarified that CSR activities should be undertaken by the companies in the project/program mode, which you talked about. One-off events such as marathons, awards, charitable contribution, advertisement, sponsorship of TV programs would not be qualified as part of CSR. So one-off they did it. But if not, I'm not doing a one-off, but I'm doing a campaign on an ongoing basis. Suppose I have Fortis Hospital. Am I in the business of healthcare? And I tell people that, take care of your health. As a good corporate citizen, I'm telling you don't fall sick if you do these things. I think it's a great thing to do, as a hospital, right? It's similar to the example of CPM that I gave you. And you're educating people about wellness. So they could also be a homeopathy company or an Ayurvedic product company which says, do this.
Whereas hotels may do what you give example, they may do that. It will qualify for CSR provided they are doing some free training programs, free awareness creation. What about free surgical procedures and things like that? They conduct a program. Maybe that may qualify for CSR. Whereas for a signal, you say save drively, don't drink and drive. What are you doing subsequently? Only giving an impression to the brain that we don't do this. But are you giving any training programs? Allied to that, maybe it can be combined as a CSR. That's what I think.
I mean, if you do that extra thing, it might make your case better. But I'm saying the way the law is, exactly. I can interpret it that I have a sustained communication campaign. I'm using electronic media to educate people through advertisements, through public service
The
messages.
same program you do it through your foundation.
So to come back to what I was saying, that this is a brand new piece of legislation. It's just started. The ministry itself has gone back and forth a number of times. So I would think the ministry as of the moment is as confused as some of us are. And trust me when I'm saying that. The ministry is as confused as we are. Because it's a piece of legislation the previous government had passed. They have taken it. There was even a strong lobby to just get rid of this. Of course that didn't work. But there were strong pressures to just get this out of the way. Scrap 135. But for some reason it stayed. Having said that, therefore, try it, sir. I mean, the consequence on you in the first year are very minimal. Try it and see, maybe you'll do the rest of the industry a favor.
Yeah.
Because you won't be put in jail for
I
that
tell you
for
what
sure.
my interest is. Our interest is to get
I want to ask you,
public
in case he does, I mean, for not only he, anyone else, what you said, they do it and die, they say they use it. There is not a CSR. Should they have to do double the amount?
No, there is no such thing contemplated. There is
No, next year CSR and previous year
I repeat, what does the law want you to do? A policy, committee, and reporting. What are you penalized for? Non-disclosure. Not for faulty disclosure. So this is a disclosure which says, hey, all this is not CSR. Sorry, sir, next year will be different.
We did it with good intention.
We did it with good intention, as he said. And the market to hell is paid with good intention always.
What our interest is really, since we are working with the government, we want the same campaigns to be taken up by the private sector so that, there is greater investment of private sector in healthcare. So that's what we want.
For example, if I have a CSR budget of 10 lakhs and give it to ISKCON, can I extend that 10 lakhs and claim that 80 also?
Yes, if the ISKCON has an ATG, yes, you can get 50% deduction on monies made for the food distribution program or anything else that they do. It has to be in a project mode. It has to be in a project mode. So the project is to send food to so many schools or whatever the project may be. And yes, you could give that and claim a deduction. Yes, indeed.
No, can I do both? Because when I
do both, meaning?
Can I expense it and claim it?
No, you can't have a double deduction.
You will not be able to expense.
There is a sum of money that you are giving ISKCON, right?
What I use it in my CSR budget is an expense. I would rather use an expense rather than
It's
claiming
not
that
expense, it is
50%.
coming below the line. It is not an expense.
It's PBT level.
It's below
It's
the
profit before tax, not PAT. It's not profit after tax, it's profit before tax.
But what I
So it is
spend, say,
You either regular stock your expense and things it comes above your PBT.
the PVT and all this for qualification. This year, I have set a policy that I am going to fund a project for midday meal for 10 lakhs. Now, the 10 lakhs is going to be an expense for me.
No, but it's not taxable. It's a
What is the income tax?
you
Not
are required under
If
law.
you are claiming it as CSR, that is not a tax deductible expense in the first place.
Yeah, section 37 is denied to you specifically over here. That it's not a business write-off. Section 37 just does not apply in this case. But other deductions are possible. That's what it says. So what are the others? Your ATG, 35, etc.
So I cannot expense it, but I can claim all this.
The focus on project based that you spoke about is good from a focus standpoint. Otherwise, so obviously there is some logic to it. But does it mean that the focus then shifts to expenditure items like say daily wells today versus let's say something like incubate or let's say putting up a school for teaching skills to tribal people and having a 10% stake in that school, in that section 25 company which is setting up that school. So if I as a company want to do that, that's really, the setting up the school is a project, but it's probably spread across 3 or 5 years. It probably have its own income and so on.
So what's your question?
My question is that project, does it mean more like expensing it out today itself, or can it be like
the reason why they have cut out donations and made it project is to put a time frame and what will happen as a consequence. Because if you say that here is Arogya, which is doing wonderful work, I'm giving you 5 lakhs for all, do whatever you want, then you have no idea what they have done with your 5 lakhs. The idea of going in project mode is Arogya gives a proposal to, let's say, his pharma company that this is what will happen, this will be the input, this will be the outcome, and so this is to measure the M&E comes into place over here. Whereas in a donation, the M&E factor vanishes. Because you're doing good work, I like you, here's the money. Now an individual can afford to do that. A corporate would like to see, if I'm giving you this money, what is really happening? I mean, so we are not talking of impact. We are at least talking of what are the basic outcomes. So how many, I mean, out of this, how many children are benefiting? How many children are stopping from getting dropouts? You'll be able to at least do some kind of monitoring and evaluation over here. In terms, whether it's a numeric thing or whether it's in terms of life change, qualitative and quantitative. You'll be able to have some M&E processes over there. And M&E is part of CSR. That is, you have to see what is happening with your money. It may not be very elaborate, but somewhere you need to know what is happening with your money. So I gave it to her. How did she use my money? She has to come back and report to me, and I then, the CSR committee, must remember that the company's CSR report, which will be put up on the website, will be signed by the MD of the company and the chairperson of the CSR committee. So CSR committee's chairperson will be responsible for that. So somewhere that whole process is there. If you work with an agency, you must have good reporting systems so that they report to the CSR committee, and the CSR committee in turn will report to the board, who will put it in its board's annual report. Because besides that annual report that every company brings out, now there is an attachment which is called the CSR report, which will be first time in this country. Some companies have been doing that. There was always a section. But now it will be a structured section with great detail, and the format or the profile or the performer of reporting is very much there on the MCS website, which is what you were referring to. There's nothing on the policy, but on the reporting there is.
From next year onwards, you think that when the company finances accounts and all the things, so 1st April they formed the new policy for the current year. I mean, not this year, but 2015 June,
yes.
April 1st.
Yes.
Is there a time limit that before April end or before May 31st they have to state the policy and file the returns with, and then compare it with the actual performance of the year?
The time frame for the policy was supposed to be as early as March this year. No one put it up. Some of the best companies have not put it up to this date. Most think that we should now do it before the end of September. September may also want the MCA.
About next year?
The MCA is fully aware that many companies are still in the process of writing their policy. And they don't want to prematurely kill CSR either by putting too much pressure on companies. They want it to fly. So somewhere they are doing a little hand-holding, knowing fully well that the companies, some of them have been taken quite aback. Because there are some companies who have unabashedly said they've been giving 3% all these while. Whereas the companies are making it 2%. I said, by all means, 2% is the minimum. Please continue with your 3%. So there are all kinds of companies who said we have the longest track record of doing this. Now we just have a method in place. We have a system in place. But otherwise we were always doing it, but we were doing it in an unstructured manner. Now the Companies Act has brought structure upon us. That is the only difference for some of these companies. And the new ones have been taken aback. Oh, what's this new thing? I mean, are we supposed to now divert our interest from business into the CSR? We have no idea of this. This is an unnecessary charity tax on us. So there are some who are grumbling about it.
1 or 2 companies have been to for they said somewhere in May and June when Modi government came, they said, no, Modi is going to kill the bird. They're going to remove the section 135.
Absolutely. There was a strong lobby that tried to throw away 135.
Very strong lobby was there.
Absolutely. I am aware of that. Every effort was made to scrap it. Keep the Companies Act, but scrap 134, at least suspend it for 1 or 2 years. It's too premature, but I mean, it's there. It's there. Okay, since in the interest of time, we cover a little bit of FCRA because FCRA was being talked about. FCRA is, as many of you know, it was the old act was of 1976. And 1976 takes us to the emergency period. That is the time when FCRA had come to us. Then this was a new act which came, which was FCRA 2010, which came into force from 1st of May 2011. And it applies to foreign contribution that comes to you from any foreign source. The reference is not to currency, because constantly we seem to think that, unless money comes to us in dollars or euros, it's foreign contribution. The strangest thing about FCRA is that somebody could actually send you money from abroad in foreign currency from a foreign bank, and it may not be FCRA. Yeah, I can see that expression on your face. Somebody will send you money from abroad, from a foreign bank, in foreign currency, and it will not be FCRA, I repeat. And somebody could be giving you money in Indian rupees, in India from an Indian bank, and it could be FCRA. And that is the nuance of FCRA. And I'll explain now, I shall proceed to explain that. This happens because of these two animals in this country called NRI and OCI. NRI meaning a non-resident Indian, and OCI being an overseas citizen of India. And NRI is simply a non-resident Indian, still holding Indian passport and not a citizen of a foreign country. What has been defined as foreign source? A citizen of a foreign country. So, if it is an NRI sitting, let's say, in the Gulf country or in the US, where he has not taken citizenship of the US, he is an Indian citizen, sends you money in American dollars from Bank of America, from New York City or Washington DC, it is not foreign contribution. Because that person, all you have to do is get a copy of that person's passport and a simple letter stating that I declare that I have not taken on any citizenship of any other country to this date. That's enough adequate and evidence. But it could be an OCI, that is an overseas citizen of India, who is, let's say, a citizen of Canada or Australia or New Zealand, and spend 6 months here, 6 months in Canada, so during the summer months comes over here or whatever else that person does, has a OCI bank account over here, NRE account, this, that and the other, gives you from Central Bank of India, Cuff Parade branch, in Indian rupees. He is a citizen of Australia, but also having an OCI card, that is foreign contribution. That's FCRA.
Is there a min-max limit on?
No min-max. Even 10 rupees equivalent is a foreign contribution if it is coming from a foreign source. Foreign source has been defined as a government of another country, a company having more than 50%. So what do you know? HDFC is a foreign source. And HDFC itself did not know it was a foreign source until it set up its own foundation and found that it could not pump money from HDFC Limited into its own foundation. And they woke up to the fact that we have got 75% foreign direct investments, and therefore we are a foreign source as per FCRA.
Can you repeat this? HDFC is a holding responsible.
It's a foreign source because FDI is a 75% with HDFC. It has foreign direct investments of 75%. So more than 50% if any stakeholder which is a foreigner, the company becomes a foreign source.
But there is no one single holder, no? It's all multiple holders nowadays.
On an average, 75% FDIs. It's a forein source.
So they can't reverse the okay.
That's how it is. So, and for the longest time they were supporting NGOs, and I was telling them, be careful guys. They said, no, we are an Indian company, completely under Indian Companies Act. I said, alright. But they made their foundation and they created the HDFRA Foundation. 100 crores was to be moved from HDFC Limited into, and then the ministry said, hold on, you're a foreign source. You can't do this. So then, there you are. So it happens. So these are the things that foreign source has been defined such. Coming to your specific query, there is something called prior permission and there is something called registration. Until the organization is at least 3 financial years old, and not just that, hold your breath. In those 3 financial years, you should have spent at least 10 lakhs rupees, that is at least $1 million Indian rupees, on actual activities, not counting admin expense, to qualify for registration. So where does that 1 million come from? You have to raise it from local sources. Yes.
In the last 3 years.
Last 3 years. That's right.
Total of 10
Yes,
lakhs.
yes. That's the minimum. Minimum of 10 lakhs on activities not counting admin costs. But let's say you are a young organization. Let's say you are only a year old, 1.5, so you don't qualify for registration. You can go for what is called prior permission. There's a separate form for that, FC1A. And process for prior permission and registration is both mandatorily online now. So what you have to do is you have to go on the, this is MHA now, Ministry of Home Affairs. On their website you kind of go and fill in that online form, take a printout of that, make a signature of your chief functionary. There's a pay order of some 2,000 rupees for that, and you post it by registered post to New Delhi, and you'll have a file number. And after that, you can track your application for prior permission or registration at the Ministry of Home Affairs website. So that is how it goes. So for newer organization, the option is the process. Somebody also asked about the timeline involved. The Act clearly says that all applications, whether prior permission or registration, must be disposed of within a period of 90 days, but that seldom happens. It doesn't happen because the Ministry of Home Affairs says the process is such, the moment we get it, we do our processing and send it out ASAP. Where does it get stuck? At the state level. So if you are in Maharashtra, they will send it to the state CBI department. And then the CBI department will give it to some police officer or a CBI officer will come to your office, basically to check whether you really exist. Are you a paper organization or do you really exist? Who are these fellows? I mean, do you really have real trustees or virtual trustees? Do you really have activity? And they send the CBI, the state CBI department sends a report to the Home Ministry again. And therefore this process, from what I understand, for permanent registration now it's even longer than a human gestation period. That means a human baby will be born in 9 months, but the FCRA registration can take much more than that. And a prior permission, if you are lucky, you might get in about 4 or 5 months, but even that can take longer. Depends on which geographical area you are in. Because the ministry, and I've had several rounds of meetings with the ministry, and they said, sometimes we go and we are unable to find the address of the NGO. And we try to contact the NGO says, गाँव में किसी को भी बोलो हमारा नाम मिल जाएगा. It doesn't work that way. So they just put village so and so, and you are at the NGO. And they said, we have nightmares tracing on some of the NGOs at the district level. I understand. There is this issue around renewal also, that sometime in the year 2009, income tax took away the requirement of renewing your ATG certificate. Literally 1 year after that, the Home Ministry decided that FCRA registration will require renewal. So when one door opened for us, another got closed immediately. All of us who have had our registrations prior to 1st May 2011, our certificates will expire on 30th of April 2016. And therefore by November 15, you will have to go in and fill up Form FC5 for renewal of your FCRA. So renewal has become mandatory. So these are just some specific responses.
So registration is 1 or 2 instances of prior permission or compulsion?
It is not a statement of law, but our practical experience says that if you've had 1 or 2 prior permissions, they have tracked you in a sense. They have seen that you exist, you have done good work, you have reported well. Your chances of getting registration become so much simpler. This is a rule of the thumb, but it is not a practice. So the first time you go for a prior permission and you have gotten it, you have reported well, your chances of getting a registration is far better. That is purely a rule of the thumb. It's not a position under law. If the law doesn't say you need to go prior permission first, then apply, there is no such language in the Act. But this is more of a practical thing. And I suppose somewhere it makes sense because the ministry has also tested you out. Oh yeah, these guys have been there. They have taken a prior permission. They did well. The process is so much simpler after that.
The prior permission per se is a KYC of the trust or the NGO, but is it also having an element of KYC of the donor, as in who is that donor, etc.
For prior permission, you definitely need to name the donor, who that donor is. The address of the donor, and you need a commitment letter from the donor, that the donor has to give you a letter. It may be an individual or an institution. Let us say the Ford Foundation wants to give you money. So the Ford Foundation will give you a letter stating, we would like to give your NGO let us say $10,000 US, subject to your getting an FCRA prior permission. You have to produce that letter by way of evidence when you are applying for prior permission.
That is a must actually, mandatory.
Absolutely, absolutely. The collector certificate is not a must, but this letter would be mandatory for you. It would definitely help your case.
And while you mentioned the online process, and I'm sure that would have benefited, but again the follow-up with the police, etc. is something the police usually, in order to make that visit, you need to follow up with them.
No.
Here I would like to
Please,
share my experience. We filed it in within a week's time. I got a call from the CBI. I mean, CBI there is a CID.
Intelligence Bureau. ID.
That we want to come and visit you tomorrow. Within a week, I never expected India can be so online. I filed it, and they gave within 1 month or 20 days. We have to send it by registered post. As soon as I sent it, within 4 days or within 5 days, I got a call. Tomorrow we want to visit you. I said, tomorrow I am going to be in Delhi because of some conference, and can you make it later? No, so after that I am not going to be there. So then finally, fine. We made arrangements. They came and said, they spent only half an hour, they said, but with our HO, they spent nearly 3 hours. I tell you. They said, we only come and check the veracity, like you said, veracity of the person. Really, trustees are existing.
And what's the other doing?
If there's any photo newspapers that has come, give that to them. That's better because so that you are existing. Okay, do some activities.
The thing is, they look out for suspicious activity if at all. And more importantly, you might be just a paper organization because there's another racket in this country where people create what is called COCA organization. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
You get your registration, you have the FCRA, everything ready, and people can walk in and the existing committee walks out. You know, the walk-in, walk-out situation. With that, this is one of the reasons why the Home Ministry says if more than 50% of your board changes, you need to implement them.
Rather than implement also.
So,
also there are reservations around political parties and media, I believe, right? In the FCRA. You can't.
yes, no political party can accept foreign contribution. It is legally disallowed.
And also in the
Newspaper also.
Media?
Yes, the editor, printer, publisher of a newspaper, cartoonist, everything is specifically laid down under the rules of FCRA 2011.
And you mentioned that whoever had the registration prior to 2011, a particular date, needs to renew. But
yes.
Whoever had it after that,
they would have an expiring date written on the certificate. Once the act came into force on 1st May 2011, all certificates issued after that have an expiring date to it. So everyone needs to reapply if you have an expiry date 6 months prior to the expiry of your certification. They need that much time to kind of process your application. So that is why for all of us who have this automatic renewal requirement, if your certificate is deemed to be expiring on 30th of April 2016, you have been recommended in November 2015 to apply for it in Form FC5.
I want to ask you here, though this happened, ID had come and checked up our records and everything, they were quite happy. They have even reported within a week's time.
Right.
Because we were so friendly with them. We just followed up with them. They also followed up. Sir, we have already sent it. From our side, we have done our work. It's already 5 months. I went to Delhi also, they said, no, you can't meet the officers. The downstairs, ground floor, they said, no, you can't do it. You can see it on your online.
Right.
So, I want to ask you is, do we have to open a HCRA account and then integrate them? Is that the case which is possible?
For the first timers?
For first timers.
Yes, you can open a nil account or an account with a minimum balance.
This is a mandatory?
Yes, you have to say this number will be our FCRA bank account number. It is mandatory.
Okay, fine.
It is
exclusively for FCRA.
Exclusively for FCRA.
Minimum balance, some banks allow you even zero balance.
That is the only time Indian money can go into that account, so to say, to open a brand new account. So when you apply before that, and here is one more piece of recommendation, that try to go for nationalized bank, avoid any cooperative bank because money transfers, etc. And I mean it very seriously, avoid foreign banks. I mean, they are a nightmare on KYCs. Complete nightmare, and I've personally experienced that. So stick to the central banks, State Bank of India's, those kinds of nationalized bank. It's far better to deal with them than foreign banks, and certainly not cooperative banks because they will always have other banking channels and it will just make it more difficult for you to receive money. So So you open a bank account with a minimal balance, 500 rupees, 1000, whatever your bank says. And when you apply, you will state that the FCRA account number will be saving bank number so-and-so with so-and-so bank, so-and-so branch.
I want to ask you one clarification. That is coming, this is the last point, last question that I'd like to have.
Yeah, I would also like others then if they have one or two, so I'll take your question.
Verify AC, what is the step required? I think minimum 3 years balance sheet is required.
Yes, indeed. And you have to develop a project which you have to send to the National Committee in Delhi. The project must have a time frame. It should be especially targeted for rural welfare or urban slum dwellers, or regarding sports or environment. There's a whole wish list that has been provided by the income tax on this. So if you fit, and it should be project mode again, and therefore project mode means there should be a time frame and clear deliverables. What will happen? So supposing you say that we want to work in so-and-so basti in Mumbai. What do you want to do? Clean drinking water, sanitation, a community center. All this you put in words, and match it with figures in a budget. So for creating the community center, the cost is this much. For clean drinking water, maintenance costs you have to build in over there. And you make this proposal and send it. If it gets approved, then all money is contributed for this project only will qualify for a 100% deduction.
Can you have two locations, either or location?
You can have it. Sorry?
Say for example, I am planning to buy a land in Shahpur or in Kopoli.
Yes.
Can I put a single project that I want to AC for this, but I do not know as on date whether the money that is going to come in through donations under 35 AC will be sufficient enough for me to buy land in high cost land in Shahpur or a low cost land in Kopoli?
It's important for you to think it over because I think the National Committee does not tolerate beyond a point in vagueness. They would like something more
specific.
specific.
Can you mention 50 kilometers in and around Bombay from the outskirts of Bombay? Is it okay?
They would prefer if you were more specific.
More specific.
Because one of the grouses that the National Committee has is lots of applications are being cleared actually, but they have not been able to reach even a fraction of the money that they claim they would be able to raise. So they said this is a community welfare project worth 1 crore. After 1.5 years, they have not even raised 10 lakhs. So they don't have the capacity. So somewhere they are also feeling that the NGO sector does not have the capacity to mobilize resources. So
is there any regulation? How long does it take for the AC as soon as you file it?
I'm told from past experience anywhere about 6-7 months is about, because the National Committee meets only some 3 times a year. And in between that, the secretary processes things and stuff like that. I would think that at a minimum it would be at least 6 months.
6 months. Is there a minimum norm on the percentage that, like you said, 10 lakhs worth of business which you have done, I mean the projects which you have done, is there any kind of a norm or anything?
They would look at your last 3 years
last 3 years you have
financial.
done average of say 10 lakhs, say, average of 10 lakhs.
They have no.
Can we go for a project of 10 crores?
You'll have to prove your capacity, that you would be in a position to raise 10 crores. Any kind of ambitious project which will not be matched by the history of your organization may probably be just.
Is there any norm within your experience? Do you have any such norms? Maybe a 10 lakh average project you can get up to 1 crore or 2 crores, something like that.
There's no hard and fast rule. Let's take some questions from others if there are any, because we need to wind up. We are already way past here. Sorry?
As far as
prior
permission. It's the local police
Yes.
So
yes.
one has to be prepared for that.
Yes.
IT and all that, they are very quick and
Yes.
know what their job is.
Yes.
And the other thing is not to get frustrated because everybody asks for the same thing. So
Absolutely. Very true.
They ask you for the same.
So yours is more like a comment rather than a question. Thank you for that. This is a comment that you are making, right?
Yeah, so I'm just sharing it. So
Yeah, sure. Deeply appreciate, yes. They ask the same, you would say, I have already given this documents, but just give it.
Yeah, just give it.
It's like when you do your passport, you have already given everything, the police station calls you, and you give the same photograph, the same copy of the passport.
So just make photocopies.
Absolutely. It's all part of the system and process. You're right. Absolutely correct, sir. Anyone else has any questions? Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, in terms of the foreign companies that are, like when you're giving the example of HDFC, now these companies also have registration in India, don't they? Most of the embassies.
Yes, they have a registration in India under the Indian Companies Act, I agree. But they are a foreign source because their investors, more than 50% of the shareholding is by foreigners.
So if they have a registration in India and
if there is a case where the stakeholders are like less than 50% foreign investors.
Then it's an Indian company. Then FCRA does not apply. Yeah, sure. Sure. No, we'll actually wind up now. We are anyway past our time, right? We are already past our time, right?
We are on time.
Oh, we are on time. Oh, wonderful. Good. So, if there are no more questions, maybe it's time to say bye-bye. Thank you.
FAQ available if anybody wants to.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's one of our publications. It's a frequently asked questions on trust tag, income tax, FCRA. That's a book I've written. It's been brought out this year.